Hey there, my fellow designers and creatives. Hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to another video in my mega product design course for beginners. In this video, we're going to learn about case studies. Everybody wants to know how to write a case study. It's such a big topic that everybody always talks about. Too many questions online, too many opinions online, so much documentation about how to write a case study, and honestly, it leads to a lot of confusion. So in this video, I'm going to dive so deep into case studies, and I've been waiting to make this video for a long time, and I just decided that I would do it. As you can see, we have a lot to cover in this video, so let's get started. Now, just a quick thing, make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a like on the video if you haven't done already. Okay, so let's get started. Now, the first most important thing that I want to mention is that this is actually going to be a two-part series. In the first part, in this video, I'm going to go ahead and answer all questions, maybe even show you a couple of examples just briefly. And in the second part, I'm going to show you an example of an actually really good industry standard case study, which is going to be a very recent case study, and it will probably give you a very good idea of how to prepare your case study. All right. Okay, so let's answer the question, what is a case study, right? You probably know what it is already. It's basically a documentation of your project. And what that basically means is you're going to have a problem statement, you're going to do a little bit of research work, and then you're going to go ahead and solve the problems, and then you're going to design screens, and then you're going to present it, right? So that is basically the documentation of everything that you did. That's called a case study. Now, a lot of people have this confusion. I don't really know why people have this confusion, but the thing is, people don't understand what is a portfolio and what is a case study. A portfolio is a collection of your case studies put together. I think that's the simplest way, right? So when you are going to interview for your job, you need to have a case study, and typically people expect you to have at least 1 to 2 case studies. I mean, all of that is subjective sometimes, but a portfolio is a collection of your case studies. If your portfolio is going to have 1 case study, then your portfolio is going to have 1 case study. That's about it, right? If you have 2 case studies, then your portfolio is going to be a little bit more stronger, and it's going to have 2 case studies, right? So that's the biggest difference between a portfolio and a case study. Okay, now the next question is, why should you write a case study, right? What is the point of writing a case study? Now, this is something that is going to really change the way you look at things, right? And there's also a lot of misconception about this. Now, the first point here is that a case study is written so that it can help you get an interview and not a job. This is so important for everybody to understand, because a good case study does not mean you're going to get a good job. Because let me tell you the reality. There is a very high chance that your case study is not going to be good enough. It's going to have tons of mistakes because it's going to be your first case study. And when you design a first case study, you're not going to get a job because it's not going to be a great case study. There are going to be so many mistakes and so many flaws. And that's expected, right? No designer, when they made their first case study, made the most amazing, phenomenal, flawless case study, right? But the thing is that a case study should be good enough to attract the company and make them realize that you have potential and you know some basics of design. And if you have that, they're going to give you an interview, and then in the interview rounds, they're actually going to test your skills, which is going to get you the job. So a case study is going to help you get an interview and not a job. The next thing here to remember is that higher the strength of the case study, higher are the chances of getting an interview with a mature or a bigger company or a startup, right? Now, the thing here is that whatever case study you do, there is a good chance that you will get some job, right? Whatever case study you do, you will get some job. So if your case study is really good, has a lot of the things recruiters actually look for, is going to be very strong, and that's going to increase your chances of getting an interview with a much bigger company or startup. Now, you might still get rejected, but that's okay. But at least you got an interview. You learned something from it. And maybe that's going to tell you that you are not good enough and there are other things that you have to work and improve on, and then you can aim again, right? So this is why you need to write a case study. Okay, so now I'm going to share a couple of golden rules here with you to really explain and make you understand and look at this whole case study thing through the proper lens, right? So I'm going to take an example over here, right? Let's say that you were the owner of a restaurant, or maybe not even a restaurant, the owner of a bakery, and you wanted somebody who bakes cakes so that you can then sell those cakes, right? Now, here's the analogy. If somebody made the perfect cake, and let's say in this case, you are the person who is the baker and I am the owner of the bakery, and I'm going to hire you into my bakery so that you can bake cakes for me, right? So if you made the perfect cake that tastes good, has the right combination of flavors, perfect firmness, I am going to assume that you followed the right process to make the cake, right? It's going to be assumed that if the outcome is correct and is good, then you followed the right process. That is the standard assumption. All right. Which means that no one really cares about your process, because you can't have a good output without a good process. This isn't like faking. This isn't like, trial and error. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a good process, and only if you have a good process and you know what you're doing, will you end up having a great output. This is so important to understand, and I'm going to explain to you why I'm saying all of this in the later part of the video. Now, I'm going to take another analogy over here. So if the cake looks good, right, you're going to want to eat it. Obviously, right? You don't want to eat a cake that, that looks like it's spoiled, or, it was thrown on the floor or something like that, right? If the cake looks yummy and looks good, you're going to want to eat it. So similarly, what that means is if your screens look good, recruiters will want to read your case study. If the final output is good looking, recruiters will want to read the case study, because in the end, right, if you're in a bakery, customers are going to come and you buy your cake if the cake looks good, if the cake looks delicious, if the cake looks yummy, right? Similarly, if you're going to work in a company as a product designer, or the company wants to have an app or website or whatever their product is to look really good, which means it needs to look really polished, very good visual design, right? Because if you can't achieve that, then there's no point of having any process. All right. I'm going to go another step further. So now let's say you ate the cake, and if the cake tastes good, you're going to want to know the process and the ingredients used to make the cake, right? So to put that into context, if the problems and solutions that you solved and took care of in your case study actually make sense, recruiters will want to know more about your design process, right? So there's a connection over here. First, the screens need to look good. And if the screens look good, they're going to want to understand, okay, fine, now the screens look good. So what were the problems and solutions that you tackled over here, right? I'm willing to give you my time to understand more about the problems and solutions, because I know that you can come up with great screens. And that's when recruiters are going to be interested to know your design process. All right, let's go a little bit further. Now, here's another thing, right? If your cake looks good, but tastes bad, you're not going to be interested in the process, right? Because the thing is that the cake looks good, but it's really bad, right? Which means that you didn't use the right ingredients, or maybe you didn't use the right proportion of ingredients, or you didn't cook it properly, right? And that's your process of making the cake. And if that's not good, then I'm not here to teach you that, right? I'm here to recruit you into my company, or my bakery in this case, because I want somebody who knows to make a good looking cake, and also who knows how to make the cake yummy, right? So similarly, if the screens look good, but the problems and solutions don't make sense, recruiters are not going to be interested in your process, right? Because they want a combination of both. Now, the important thing here to understand is that don't take this as a one-to-one correlation. There's a lot of times that there is a chance that if you're good enough, your screens look good, but your problems and solutions are sort of decent and okay, then you still might get an internship or something, right? You might at least get an interview, right? So it's not that just because your problems and solutions aren't correct, you're not going to get an interview or something like that. Don't try to make a one-to-one correlation over here between the bakery example and product design. But I'm just trying to give you like an overall example so that you understand how recruiters think and how you need to draft your case study. Now, I mentioned over here where it said that no one actually cares about your process, and then I put a terms and conditions over here. I put an asterisk over here, right? So let's sort of look at that and understand what that actually means. So this is another important thing that you really, really must know. Your process is going to be tested in your portfolio round and not in your case study, right? A lot of people think that you have to show your entire process in your case study because that's important. Yes, that is important, but not now. Right? Because the first point of validation is if your cake looks good, which basically means if your screens look good, right? That's what they're going to be testing, right? And if that looks good, they're going to want to know about your process. And what that means is your process is going to be tested in the portfolio round, which is basically the first interview or probably the second interview that you get, and not in your case study. Next. The reason is because recruiters don't have time to validate your research. They don't have time to validate your process, right? Validating that takes a lot of mental energy and requires a lot of time to be invested, right? And recruiters are going to spend probably 5 to 6 minutes or maybe maximum 10 minutes reviewing your case study and seeing if you're fit for their company, right? Recruiters want to quickly check if you pass the benchmark set by their company, right? And if you pass the benchmark, you will then get a portfolio round interview. And in the portfolio round interview, you can go all in and talk about your design process, right? In the portfolio round, people are not going to care about how your screens look because they've already tested and validated that in your case study, right? And what people want to see in your portfolio round is your explanation, your communication skills, your storytelling skills, whether you have good common sense, you understand what is product design, you're able to answer questions that people throw at you. Right. And of course, here in your portfolio review round, people are going to, you're going to have to show a presentation or make a pitch deck or take them through your case study. Now, I have a separate video on that, and I have a very detailed video on that. Make sure to check that out if you haven't done already. Okay, let's move forward. So that might lead you to a question. Does it mean that case studies should be short? Right? Does that mean case studies should be short? Now, here is the truth. The truth is it doesn't matter at all how long or short your case study is, right? It doesn't matter. And I'm going to show you proof right now. It doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is that it should be easy for recruiters to find what they want, even if it's a 15-minute long case study. They should be able to find what they want. Now, I want to explain something over here. The reason that there's a lot of information or a lot of advice online where people say, make your case study short, recruiters don't have time. The reason they say that is because designers who are learning design fill 90% of their case study with unnecessary, irrelevant information. So when senior designers say, make your case study short, they're actually telling you to remove the unnecessary and useless information that doesn't help a recruiter make a decision. They're not really telling you to reduce the size of the case study. They're telling you to remove unnecessary things and only show relevant things. Because if you end up removing a lot of unnecessary things, your case study is automatically going to become shorter and smaller. The advice that senior designers give is correct, but the way it's interpreted by junior designers is the problem over here. Anyway, I'm going to go to my browser now. I'm going to show you a couple of case studies and explain something very important to all of you. So I'm on Medium and I'm going to show you 4 case studies. I'm going to start off with my case study. Okay. As you can see over here, this case study is 11 minutes long. Okay. I'm going to go to another case study. This is 12 minutes long. Okay. This is 13 minutes long and the other one is 14 minutes long. Now 14 minutes is quite a long case study, right? And if I sort of start scrolling, you can see that the scroll bar is like super small, right? Like there's so much of information, right? But let me explain something over here. This was my case study that I worked on at Unacademy, and this helped me get the next 2 jobs that I worked at, right? I used the same case study in the same project and that made me land 2 jobs. Even though my case study was 11 minutes long, okay? Here's another one. So Divyanshu is also another designer. He used to work at Dunzo and then he went to Flipkart and today he works in London at Bumble, right? So I'm pretty much guessing that with his Dunzo design project, he then used this to get into Flipkart. Now, Flipkart is also a really great company. It's a huge company and it's very hard to get into that even though there are like hundreds of designers there, right? So the thing is that even though this is a 12-minute long case study, he was able to get a job in a really good company. Moving forward. This is a Spotify project, which is basically adding a feature into Spotify. This isn't even a full-fledged app design. This is just adding a feature, and that is 13 minutes long. And this project got her into Zeta, which is also a great company which has amazing designers, right? Even though it's 13 minutes, they still got a great job. I'm going to go to another one here. This is a 14-minute. This case study got her into Hotstar, which is also one of the most popular OTT platforms in India, right? It also has lots of designers. It's a great company. It also has a great product, right? So how did a 14-minute case study get this person a great job at a great company? So if I come back to Figma and if I want to reiterate on my points, the point is it doesn't matter how long or short your case study is. The case study was prepared in such a way that it made it very easy for recruiters to find what they were looking for. And obviously I'm going to tell you what those are, right? And the thing here is I'm going to reiterate this point again. That case study, irrespective of how long it was able to get the person, all of us, all the 4 people that I showed, an interview, but not the job. We got the job because of the whiteboarding sessions that we had, the portfolio sessions that we had, all of the other interviews that we had, the culture fit round, the conversation with product managers and engineers, right? This is what got us the job. But the case study just got us the interview, right? So always keep that in mind. Okay, so now let's actually see, what do recruiters really want to see, right? What is it that they really want to see? And when I say recruiters, I'm basically meaning anybody. It could be the HR, it could be a senior designer, it could be the lead designer, it could be anybody in the company who wants to hire you, right? So the first thing is they want to see context and problem statement. They want to know about the problem statement. What is the problem that you are trying to solve, right? Now, it could be one problem statement. It could be a bunch of problem statements combined together. It could be a redesign. It could be adding a feature, right? If I go back to Chrome, this project that I worked on was designing an entire product from scratch, right? It wasn't just a redesign. It was building a brand new product from scratch. The second case study was revamping a particular feature, right? It's not even a feature, I would say. It's as it says, revamping Dunzo's order tracking experience, right? It's just a flow that was revamped. Third one, introducing a brand new feature into Spotify. And number 4, this was again redesigning an entire web-based platform where it was not just a flow. She redesigned the entire product from scratch, all the way from visuals to information architecture and even the flows as well, right? So the company that's recruiting you wants to know more about what is it that you solve. What is the project all about? So coming back to Figma, right? Spend 5% of your case study having this information. Then the most common and most everybody's favorite thing, which is so controversial in nature, is the design process, the research, the empathy map, affinity mapping, and user interviews and surveys, all of that. Limit that to 10 to 15%. That's it. 10 to 15%. And what you actually need to show is not what you did. What you need to show is what did you learn from what you did, right? What did you do to gather relevant insights? Obviously, you have to tell them that I did this in order to get these insights. The recruiters, they actually want to see the insights more than what you did, right? So if you show huge user flows and information architecture, all of that, that's irrelevant because I can't understand anything from it. What's important for the recruiter is only the insights. What did you learn? What did you understand? And there are two things over here. It's relevant information and information which is valuable, which basically becomes insights, right? Then moving forward, we have polished high-fidelity designs, right? And I'm going to explain what polished high-fidelity really means, right? 75 to 80% of your case study needs to be this. It needs to have more and more and more visuals. People want to see screens. People want to see user flows, right? They want to see the outcome. That's very important. Then this is something that a lot of people do not have knowledge about. They ignore this and they don't even know this, right? And to be very honest, when I started my career, I didn't know much about this, and I started to learn this quite later on in my career. But today there is so much information online, and it's really important for you to understand how is your solution helping the business. It's very important to know that because that's your job. Now, I have a video on solving problem design statements, and I go into so much detail, so make sure to check it out. Link will be down below in the description. And the other thing here is additional stuff, which is learnings. What did you learn? Your challenges. Maybe I'm going to add that as well. I'm going to say challenges. You can add that. And, even if you want to add a prototype, that's also fine, right? This is extra and it takes a lot of time, right? So have prototype as an additional option if you want. It's not mandatory. It's definitely your choice. I have never added prototypes in my case study. I've never found it relevant, but if you feel it makes sense, go for it and add it. Now, these are basically the elements of your case study. But putting them all together, there are additional things that recruiters are going to want to see. So the first one is the storytelling. And I'm going to get to that in a bit. The next is the parent level and child level problems that were solved, right? Now, it's very obvious that it's not going to be one single straightforward problem that you're going to be solving. It's going to be a collection of problems, right? Let's say you're redesigning a particular user flow, right? Solving the user flow is the main problem, which is basically the parent level problem. And under that, you have multiple screens. Maybe you want to change the order of certain screens. Maybe you want to redesign the visual hierarchy. You want to improve the color contrast. These are small children level problems, right? So companies want to see what was the main problem and what were the children level problems, right? So that's what they want to see. And finally, they want to see the presentation of your entire case study. It's really important that the presentation is nice. It doesn't have to be super awesome, pixel perfect and phenomenal. It just has to be pleasant and easy, and it needs to make somebody feel that, okay, this person actually put some effort to go out of the way to make it look nice, right? Just think of the cake example, right? Just having the cake is not enough. The cake needs to be decorated in a nice way. It needs to have probably some candle. It needs to be put in a very nice box. And you've seen a lot of bakeries, when you buy a cake from them, they also give you a plastic knife along with it, with a ribbon and stuff like that, right? So that is the presentation of the whole thing. Even though cake already looks good, and the cake definitely is going to taste yummy, right? Presentation is very important. Okay, so now I'm going to get into the details of these. So what does polished high fidelity design really mean, right? First of all, they need to be realistic looking screens. What do I mean by realistic? Now I'm going to be showing you a couple of examples of case studies that I see over here that I found online, which I feel could have been a lot better. And I'm not here to make fun of anybody or put them down. I'm just taking these as examples, as an opportunity for everybody to learn, right? So as you can see, this is one particular screen over here. And the thing is that this doesn't look like a realistic screen, right? If you open any app on your phone and you look at this screen, there's so much of difference, right? So make sure your screens look realistic and not dribbly in nature. That's number one. So here's another example. So if I look at one of these images, right, they look very polished, they look fine, they look neat. But the thing here is that if I zoom in, I don't know if I can zoom in over here. These patterns that you see over here are pretty much like web patterns. These aren't patterns that you're supposed to be using on mobile apps. And these patterns used to exist, but they were existing a long time ago and now nobody uses it. Typically, you need to bring in a bottom sheet. And so this becomes like an unrealistic looking design because a screen like this can't exist anymore. I think there's another example which I saw. I think there was a calendar somewhere. Let me see if I can quickly pull that. So here again, this is more of probably a web-based pattern where you get like a calendar over here. Ideally, you would want to have the native calendar that depends upon the phone's OS. If you're using an iPhone, you're going to see an calendar that looks native to the iPhone. And if you have an Android, you can use that, right? So you can design your custom one as well, but I think this is definitely not the way it should be, because this definitely looks like something that you would have on a website rather than a phone, right? So making sure that you're even using the right components is important, because like I said, the font size, the colors, all of that look fine, but it's still not a realistic looking phone because a design like this can't exist. Also, it's a little weird here that only this is pure white in color, but the rest of the UI is black in color. So that's also not a realistic design. The next is obviously have good visual hierarchy, which basically means you need to know how to use colors, typography, spacing, layouts, put all together. Make sure that your design makes sense, it looks good, it looks realistic, and basically has good visual hierarchy, right? Proper white space, good combination of colors and font sizes, and all of that. Now, of course, I have a lot of tutorials in my playlist, so make sure to check out all those tutorials. I've covered every single topic. If you want to become great at visual design, make sure to check those out. Okay, the next is please do not show your design systems. They are totally irrelevant. Nobody wants to see them. It doesn't help the recruiter make any decision about you, because unless you made the design system from scratch, which is going to be quite unlikely, don't show it. So here is another project, right? So here she's showing a couple of icons and a couple of font sizes and all of that and colors, right? The thing is, when I look at this, I don't know, what am I supposed to learn and understand from this, right? It just tells me that you followed a design system to design the app, right? But the thing is that when you join a company, you are going to follow a design system that's set by the company. You don't have a choice, right? If you don't know, you're going to learn. If you know, that's well and good, right? So showing this is just unnecessary information that is not going to help the recruiter make any decision, right? So don't show any design system related information. Okay, then we have wireframes. Now, again, everybody loves to do wireframes and show these wireframes. Let me tell you, wireframes are just a bunch of boxes that are there. Anybody can do a wireframe. Even an engineer can do a wireframe. Even somebody who's not even a designer can do a wireframe, right? And a wireframe is not supposed to be final. So why are you showing wireframes when I as a recruiter have nothing to learn from it? What am I supposed to learn looking at your wireframes, right? So again, please don't show any wireframes. Now, there's another thing that a lot of people always ask me about is what about design iterations? Should I show them, right? I think this is a very valid question and a great question. And let me explain my point of view of this. So there are two rules. One, it's not mandatory to show your iterations. You can show your iterations in your portfolio round because that's where it makes a lot of sense. But if you show your iterations in your case study, it just unnecessarily makes it longer, right? So it's not mandatory. You can still show it, all right? That's rule number 2. You can still choose to show them, but only show the ones that are worth showing, right? Show the ones where the reason for why you didn't select that iteration is not obvious, right? If there were 10 iterations that you made, maybe show 1 or 2 of them that actually were good ones and you rejected them for some reason that was not obvious. Don't show 100 iterations. Probably just 1 or 2 or maybe even 1. That's more than enough. And finally, the thing is, like I said before, you will get a chance to show these in your portfolio round, right? So the idea here is to get the interview, and then any additional things that you're not talking about in your case study, you can talk about that in your portfolio round because you are going to have to talk about them in your portfolio round. Okay, let's go forward. Now, let's talk about the presentation of your screens, right? The presentation of your case study, altogether. The first thing is please have an attractive hero image, all right? Number 2. Put screens into the right mockup. What does this actually mean? So here's another case study that I found, right? So the thing here is that these screens are just so blank and there's not even, I don't even know if this is for Android or iOS. And, there's no status bar on the top. And if this is an iPhone, I don't know if this needs to be a home indicator on the bottom. And it just looks like, like white squares. And it doesn't really look well presented, right? So try to always put them in mockups so that it's presented in a very nice way. Because like I said in the beginning, higher the strength of the case study, higher are the chances of you getting an interview with a mature or big company, right? Because these companies look for as many skills as they want. They want to see your presentation. They want to see attention to detail. They want to see every single thing. So go the extra mile because these are going to be recognized by these companies. So don't think it's not important. It is very much important. Anyway, coming back, I'm going to look at another case study. So here, right, here in this case, if I zoom in over here, a lot of things are wrong over here. First of all, I can barely see how the UI looks like because it's presented in the super fancy layout. And the other thing, as you can see, the things are getting cut over here, right? And this is an iPhone screen, so which basically means there needs to be a home indicator, right? All of these are, I would consider to be a little bit of a sloppy design, and these are not very polished. These are not well presented. Right? So make sure that when you present screens, it's very nice. Don't present them in isometric format and all of these crazy angled mockups. Keep it very simple. Keep it minimal. Keep it elegant. Okay, let's look at another one. Right? Try to reduce pixelation as much as possible. Now, this is definitely like a technical design thing. You should know how to make sure that you export your screens in high resolutions. It's basically knowing how to use Figma and images. That's very standard and straightforward. Like it's like basic things a designer needs to know. So that's that. Next is do not present them like a gallery. And let me explain what this really means. And this is going to be sort of connected to the next part. But let me give you an example. So here's another case study where all the screens that were designed were put together one by one, right? So you have start screen, welcome screen, onboarding, sign up, homepage, menu overlay, choose address, which has a typo over here, and then donation, and then partner shops, and all of these things, right? The thing is, first of all, when I click on this, I can barely see the details of the screen, and I sort of have to zoom in, and it's a lot of hassle. And the second thing is, I don't really understand what am I supposed to look at over here. Fine, the sort of screens look like okay, but there are so many UI issues. There are so many information architecture issues, visual hierarchy issues, right? So when you present screens like this, I'm not really sure what I'm supposed to do because you're supposed to be talking about the problems, right? You're not a UI designer who's just showing the final result. You need to explain the user flow. You need to explain the problem that you solve. You need to explain the solution, right? So refrain from showing screens like this. Let's go forward. The last one is try to explain more on the images, right? So when you have an image, use annotations on the image rather than having a lot of text, right? So I'm just going to say rather than having text under or above the image, right? The thing is that any context or extra information can be outside the images, right? Which basically means that if you have an image and you have a bunch of screens and then you sort of used arrows or annotations, right? Have the most relevant information on the image. Try to explain everything on the image. And any extra context or other information that you feel is not really relevant, but you still feel it's important to say, have that before the image or after the image. And of course, in the next video, I'm going to give you a real example so you can actually understand clearly in detail what I'm talking about. But I hope this at least makes a little bit of sense. Now, the story. Now, the thing here is that it's so hard to explain what storytelling is, because the thing is that you either know what it is or you either don't know what it is. It's as simple as that, right? The only reason you'll know how to tell the story is if you know what you actually did. Because the thing is, let's think about that cake example, right? If the cake came out fine and it looks perfect and it tastes amazing, you can actually teach somebody and explain to them what you did. So it's actually on you to do it the right way so that you will know what the story is. Now, I'll try to explain this in the next video again, where I take you through the case study and explain things in more detail. But let me try to give a little bit of information of what this could actually mean. So, if you want to draft a story, right, you want to talk about what is the problem that you found. Now, here again, as I mentioned, there are parent and children level problems, right? It's not that you're going to be talking about one problem the entire case study. You're going to be covering multiple problems in the case study. Some of them are going to be parent level and some are going to be children level, right? So, what is the problem that you found? The next thing people want to know is, how did you discover that this was a problem? Who told you this was a problem? Did you look at some data? Did somebody tell you? Did you realize it was a problem, and why? Right? Then you tell them, what did you do to understand more about the problem? Right? Now, the thing here is that all of these three things can sometimes be combined together. Maybe these two can be combined together, or maybe these two can be combined together, right? This is not a hard and fast rule, right? Try to understand the structure of the story, right? You're building up slowly one by one and giving more context to the user one piece at a time. All right? Then, what was the solution? Of course, now you did research and you did solutionizing and you did comparative analysis, you did this and you did that. All that is cool, right? What is the solution? And then finally, you need to talk about what is the result or impact of that solution, right? Now, this is where business metrics comes into picture, product side of things, right? Because this is where the story is sort of forming, right? And this is what I'm saying, that if you actually know what you did, if you did the process correctly, if you understand what product design is, forming the story is not going to be hard for you. If you just randomly did something out of nowhere, you're not going to be able to frame the story. It's as simple as that. I hope that makes a lot of sense, right? Now, sometimes you can't actually show numbers or actual metrics because of confidentiality. That's fine. But at least tell the people what were the actual metrics. Was it the conversion rate? Was it the sign-up flow rate? Was it the reduction in drop-offs? Was it increase in engagement? Was it increase in page view? Was it increase in completion time? Was it increase in feature adoption? What was it? At least tell the name of the metrics that you wanted to measure. It's fine if you don't want to show the actual numbers. I never showed any numbers in my case studies. And the final thing here is that do not explain at a screen level. Instead, explain at a problem level. Let me explain what this means. So here's a case study that I found on Behance, right? Here, onboarding screens, right? Then home screen, right? Then something called spending circle. I think this must be like the spendings tab, right? And then here, I don't know, I'm not really sure what this is. Maybe this is the reward section, right? The thing here is that if you show screens in isolation, it really doesn't make sense to the recruiter, because the recruiters don't really care about the home screen or, the reward screen or the spending screen. They want to understand what is the problem that you solved. It's very important to explain the problem and the solution, right? Because the home screen is just a home screen, right? What am I supposed to do with that information, right? What problem was there on the home screen that you solved? Was it a UI problem? Was it a user flow problem? What was it that you solved, right? So try not to tell the story in forms of individual screens, but rather the problems that you solved. Let me give you an example. So here in this case study, which is basically a redesign of a bus booking platform called as Redbus, right? You can see here that she started with saying the search results page, but she then started breaking them down into individual problems at a time, right? So there was lack of visual hierarchy, and this was the solution, right? Then there was inability to change parameters, and then this was the solution, right? So even though she's showing individual screens at a time, she's actually talking about the problem and the solution, right? If you go a little bit forward, right? So this is the fourth problem. The sorting options didn't look clickable, so she came up with the solution, right? Let's go a little bit deeper. Let's see if we can find something over here, right? So here again, right? So this is the tickets booking flow, right? It's not a screen. It's a user flow of booking a ticket. And in that, she's explaining this was the first problem, inconsistency in page view of multiple steps, right? And then she shows the solution, right? Second, complex transaction between stages of the booking flow, right? That's the problem. right? And then this is the solution. So she's giving some context and then she's explaining, right? So this is the ideal way you want to go about, because this is what people care about, right? They don't care about individual screens. They care about the problem. And the problem is usually in a user flow, right? You're trying to improve the user experience of a user flow. So always keep that in mind. And finally, reiterating on what I'm actually trying to say here, right? The first point I'm actually going to show both the points here, right? The first point is that only explain solutions that are worth explaining and not the obvious ones to the reader. Because the thing here is that product designers are supposed to be solving problems, which means that you need to be solving complex problems. You need to be solving interesting problems. You need to be solving problems for which the answers are not obvious. Always keep that in mind. And let me give you a quick example of that. So I came across this case study here as well, right? And if I come over here, this person has actually explained a lot of these things, right? User's address, search label, carousel, clear call to action. User can also favorite salons, right? Now, let me tell you this. Even if you're not an experienced designer, when I look at the screen, I already know everything over here, right? But what I don't understand is, why did you design the screen this way? Why did you add a particular feature? What was the problem that you were trying to solve, right? So here there's a CTA that says call, right? And he says that the user are able to call for any query. I know that. It's obvious that tapping on this is going to enable me to call someone. Tapping on this button is going to help me add to my favorite salons, right? So try not to explain things that are very obvious. Try not to explain things that are, that require just like barely any common sense. Try to explain things that are not obvious to the reader. Here again, right? The person mentioned popular salons and nearby salons suggested according to the location. I know that. It says popular shops. I can see that. You don't have to explain that to me. But why did you add that over here? What was the intent? What was the objective of adding that over here? That is something that I don't know. I can make guesses, of course, right? I can never know what the answer is unless you actually tell me what it is, right? But I know that these are popular shops, and I'm very sure that these popular shops are also based on my location. Because if I want to find a salon or a barber over here, obviously I want to go to a place that is close to where I live, right? It's obvious. So tell me things that I don't know. That's very important for every designer to understand. And the last one, right? Most likely your solutions, let me just remove that word. Most likely your solutions are going to be in the format of a user flow, right? And not a single screen. Of course, sometimes it can be a single screen itself. It's not really, like a wrong thing or a bad thing. There can be a problem on a particular screen as well. Maybe the screen had a lot of visual noise. The screen didn't look good. There was some problem with the screen, right? So it can still be a single screen, but most likely you're going to be solving a problem which has a collection of screens, which is basically a user flow, right? So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comment sections down below. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for more amazing, awesome content. And I'll see you guys in my next video. So till then, take care and bye-bye.